Meet Ravi. It's Wednesday evening, and Ravi stands in his garage with the hum of his electric vehicle charger faint in the background. He's holding a basketball, debating whether to join his kids outside for a game. His phone vibrates on the workbench nearby, lighting up with an endless list of unread emails. Torn between his kids' laughter outside and the silent call of his inbox, Ravi sets the ball down with a sigh and picks up his phone. Ravi is a senior manager at a leading electric vehicle manufacturer in Northern California. His colleagues admire his intelligence and dependability, but Ravi feels a deep disconnect. He struggles to express his value and connect with his team in a meaningful way. In meetings, his thoughtful ideas are often drowned out by louder voices. His reserved nature means he avoids the spotlight, which makes him feel unseen and underappreciated. Ravi's challenges run deeper than communication. He understands that with leadership, it needs to be more than just about delivering results. It has to be about connection and inspiring his team. But how can he inspire fellowship when his own sense of worth is shaky? He dreams of empowering his team and earning their trust, but he's stuck in this cycle of self-doubt. His concise and efficient style often comes across as transactional, not relational. And he wonders how he could align his leadership with authenticity and purpose. At home, Ravi's a devoted husband and father, doing his best to show up fully for his family. But even there, the weight of unfinished tasks and lingering self-doubt shadows those moments of joy with his family. Ravi wishes for more confidence to take on challenges at work and to cultivate deeper connections with the people around him. Ravi's story is one of quiet potential waiting to be unlocked. Today, I'm speaking with Ryan Hartley, the UK's leading heart-centered leadership coach and host of the globally successful Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. With listeners in over 150 countries, Ryan's podcast has reached the top 200 charts in 66 countries, providing heart-centered insights that transform lives and careers. Through his coaching and inspiring conversations, Ryan empowers leaders like Ravi to align with their values, to lead with authenticity, and foster meaningful connections. I'm excited to hear how Ryan would guide Ravi to step into his full potential and become a leader who inspires, empowers, and leaves a lasting impact. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. Ryan, we're going to dive into Ravi's story here in a bit, but I want to dive into your story first, because you said how at the age of 25, two things happened in your life that made a shift in you, or you had some realizations. So what happened and what were those realizations?
Thank you. I've been with my childhood sweetheart since I was 15. And we had our first son at 25. So we had our first son, and I was in the police at the time. I had a career in the UK police service, doing a variety of different roles. And at this point in time, I just entered my first management role. So at the age of 25, in the same year, I became a manager for the first time, and I became a father for the first time.
Wow. So I was, I think, 26 when I had my daughter. And so I was considered, I guess, a young dad relative to my friends. Was that the same for you?
Yeah. My mum and dad were like 18 and 19. So that was really young. But yeah, by our standards, by today's standards, 25, 26 was quite young. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so what was that like for you having to, no one hands you the manual, right? No
Right.
one, yeah.
Do you know what? It's funny because my wife's always said that like I'm so like convincing. I've always been this kid that'll try anything. I've just had a bit of confidence, cockiness. I don't know what it is, but I've always just been confident just to try it and give the impression that I know exactly what I'm doing.
So you just went in that with that mindset.
I figure it out. I've always had a figure it out mindset, and it's not until I get to my years now and I look back and go, "Wow, I was so naive." Like, but me at the time, I'd have sat here and told you with absolute conviction, "Yeah, I know what I'm doing."
Right. So okay. So I assume you had a similar mindset with getting into a management role. I guess what were some of the early lessons that you learned in being a new, younger leader?
Yeah, well, I think because I was in the police, the assumption wrongly I made was that you're good at your job, you get promoted, but then you realize that you have to manage people, and people are both simple and complex. With many matters that come to the workplace that at the age of 25 I hadn't experienced. So how was I able to guide and to manage these people? And for me, the main realization was just simply this: I was having similar feelings towards my child, which was absolutely love and devoted to this child. I want to just give my son the best life possible, which means I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. and do the night feed. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to suffer a little bit the next day. Why? Because I want the best for this little child. I want to see him grow. And I was having similar feelings to my people at work. I was having feelings where I wanted to create an environment where they enjoyed coming. I wanted to create an environment where people could do their best work. And I wanted to create an environment where people went home better for those who really needed them. I had a number of single parents on my family. My mum was a single parent, so I could see what it was like for life at home when I was younger, when she would work 2, 3 jobs. And I somehow realized at 25 that me as a manager could make a difference to the lives of not the people that were just in my team, but the people that received mum and dad home when they got home. So I think that was a really important realization at 25, just a little seed, because when you have that seed, you then start to take the opportunities to really intentionally and purposefully lead people and send them home better.
Yeah. And how I've seen that seed sprout into what it is that you do now is what you term heart-centered leadership. That's something that I hear you talk about quite a bit. So I'm going to ask you to just define that. What is heart-centered leadership?
Yeah, well, I look at the definition of leadership itself, and for me, it's not rank hierarchy. At the police, it was how long you've been doing the job, and dare I say, how close your parking space was to the building. These were the hallmarks of what leadership looked like. Is what I had on my shoulder. Whereas for me, I think leadership is a verb. It's a behavior, and many times when we talk about that's the style of verb leadership, how can I lead other people? The context isn't about when it's going well. It's about the when the challenges arise, and there's a real thing that I think comes into play is that flinch response. When there's like fear, that fight, flight, freeze moment. I think Viktor Frankl described it perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there's a gap, and in that gap lies your choice, and in your choice lies your freedom. I think that is a leadership definition without us really knowing it, because our leadership is the ability to increase that gap between stimulus and response. Are we responding with our chimps and are acting out of programming, which is generally a fear-based, or am I able to make a best decision or action in that moment in the service of other people? For me, leadership is about serving others and my willingness to sacrifice. I have a Christian faith, and in the Bible it says that no greater gift has man than to lay down his life for those that he loves. I don't think that's an algorithm. I don't think that's a logic. I don't think that's rational. I don't think that is a product of the mind. I think the mind has been put on a pedestal in our culture, and I think we can do great things and achieve great things with our mind leading the way. But I think we'll end up in somewhere called the penguins of Madagascar moment, which is when we look around at our life and we go, well, this sucks, because we've built it based on the external expectations of everything else around us. We've got the wife, we've got the house, we've got the job, we've got the children. I should be happy, I should be fulfilled, but I've built it based on my mindset. that's where we come into something deeper. It has to be something deeper, something that's going to make me the type of man that's willing to serve and to sacrifice. And I think that is the heart. When we talk
Yeah.
about the matters of the heart, we talk about love. And when we talk about love in action, that's courage. And the French word for heart is cœur, courage. So I think I want to be someone that is bringing more of that style of leadership to the world. That's love, that's courageous, that's kind, but also challenging. And I don't think we get to there intellectually and logically. I think that's what it means to be heart centered, not heart only, because I think we have a mind. It has an incredible purpose, but the mind for me is the servant to the soul and to the heart.
Yeah. And by the way, I love that Viktor Frankl quote. It's I've referenced it so many times. I've read Man's Search for Meaning, and I would recommend anybody get that book if you haven't read it yet. There's so much value to it. And what I often confront, Ryan, and I'm sure you see this as well, is the cultures that many organizations have is one where the leaders feel so much as though they have to emphasize the mind, right? And words like love.
I know,
right? Right? Like no one talks about love in the workplace, right? But I'm curious as to how you could, or how would you challenge that? Like in other words, like when you have a group of people in a room, right? And these are leaders that are incredibly intelligent. And I've been in those kind of rooms. I was in that room at Tesla. I've seen it in many different organizations where they're very left brain. It's just tell me what I need to do. Let's solve the problem. Let's look at it intellectually. And you're saying, hey, let's talk about love, right? Let's talk about the heart, right? How do you find, I guess, a way to bring them in and open them up to that idea?
It's pointing them to where that's already present. Like I'm a Dolphins fan. There's nothing logical or rational about being a Dolphins fan, right? But there's emotion. There's, we go on this wave of emotion. And, here in England, we have grown men crying over England football players going out of tournament. So there's something about that. There is something that a man does posture his heart on, his passion onto. So it's not that we can't do it. It's just, what am I placing that on? But Jay, I'll be honest with you. When I started talking about heart-centered leadership and leading with love whilst I was still employed, senior leaders sat around with my social media profile, and forgive the words, but the words that got back to me were, "Who the fuck does Ryan Hartley think he is? Who does he think he is?" And I'll be honest, I was not mature enough to handle that feedback. I was late 20s. I had got myself to a bit of self-awareness. I had the courage to express myself. But man, that time revealed to me where I needed to heal. My love language is the words of affirmation. Those were not words that were affirming, but they did point me to a source where I had to go within. It showed me where I needed to go and heal, to show me where I was whole. And Jay, the greatest lesson I've taken from that is I was a young man leading for love. It was the illusion of leading with love. No, I was leading for love. I was in service of other people so that people loved Ryan Hartley. And guess what? When I got the affirmation of my early community, it made things worse for me because it took me away from those people who truly loved me and cared for me, my wife, my children. And when things weren't working here at home, I wasn't rushing to fix it. I was going to where people really loved me. I was I was immature. I did not have the wholeness of heart that I do now. And that was probably the greatest gift I ever got, those feedback. I can say that now, some near 10 years later, but I didn't feel that at the time. It pointed me back to where I needed to heal, to where I had to return to wholeness. And for me, Psalm 23 is very powerful. It just starts with, "The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. I lack nothing." For me, that is the posture of a heart set. When I come into my heart, I go past the illusions of separation, of not enoughness, not being worthy. And I come to feel at one with all that is. And then when you feel in that state, it's like, man, I have all that I need. I lack nothing. And now from that context, I can show up lacking nothing. I can genuinely posture my heart and my love and my service on other people without needing anything in return. And I needed to learn that wisdom, and I needed to go on that journey so that I may be of pure service with no, shall we say, underlying expectations. Dr. Robert Glover would call them covert contracts. I'm not putting on the need from other people. So yeah.
What is the fallacy I see, and what I've experienced personally, is when we're looking to fill the hole in our heart with someone else's words or with the kind of validation and reward we hope to get. And when we lead from that place, we are less effective than leading from a whole heart. And I guess what is well, you know what, let me ask you this, because this has piqued my curiosity in learning more about you. In Ravi's case, right, he struggles a bit here with being able to really connect, and he feels that at times he's quite transactional. And I've heard you talk about how for men, it could be even more challenging. It's harder for a male at times to express themselves and to go through that kind of healing. And I guess I would just wanted to ask you to talk about that a little bit, and how, that's a real thing, and how you would recommend people who have that tendency to be a little bit more closed off, how they would work through that.
Yeah, and this is potentially a generational thing, and I won't profess to be an expert on this, but there's an incredible book called The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell. Really talks about this in far greater eloquence than I can. But I think one of the things that happens is when men equate vulnerability and full expression with weakness, emotions and weakness. And I think when we make that association, then there is no willingness to explore chambers of our hearts, because, hey, what might I find? Is that going to make me weak? And am I going to be somewhat judged? And so we close those chambers down. We close them down. My story is a little bit different. I didn't grow up with a male presence in the home, so I've not necessarily seen that. I have the other challenge of if we're talking about the masculine feminine polarity, the challenge I've had to learn is how to develop in my more masculine side of things. Not necessarily DIY. I'm still rubbish at DIY, but how can I be a bit more calm in the storm? How can I be a bit more grounded, not just fly by the wings of my emotions? And how can I bring into that logic and reasoning and discipline and doing the things that are difficult? Because I've learned that if I just prioritize comfortable as a man, then I will become a self-serving. The work of Dr. John Gray talks about if men are too comfortable, then they have an estrogen imbalance, which leads to addictions. And the world's built for our comfort, right? All of the things that we can get at the tap of a finger, that takes men into pleasure center, comfort territory, and so that can be equally as damaging. But just to come back to your specific question around how to just explore those chambers of the hearts, it takes courage. It takes the willingness to look. I think we're the first generational change makers, is what I call them. We're a generation we can't get away with podcasts and YouTube channels, and there's so much information. Sometimes it's about just having the courage to go look, go on that journey to explore what's in there, and just it's this is where men. So I've been leading a men's group for the last 2 years. Never anticipated I'd lead a men's group, but I've come to the understanding that men don't necessarily do face-to-face therapy as much as women, but they do shoulder-to-shoulder, which is this. You and I, you're just talking about what you're up to at the weekend, going on a hike. That's therapy. That's like shoulder-to-shoulder conversation, whistle while we work, and men deal with things in a slightly differently way. I guess it comes down to this one sentence I heard, which is that if everyone thinks they need to improve a man, the conclusion, because it's the idea of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, if we're trying to fix something, the implication is that it's broken, and that's never a great place to start from, because as I understand it, when a man feels like he's loved, he will improve himself. So it's coming to that place where you can be with another brother and just have no judgment, pure acceptance, and he will look for strategies and ways to improve himself for the ones that he loves.
Yeah. Well, I could relate to so much of that experience growing up. My father was oftentimes a little closed off with his own emotions. Middle Eastern background, men do not express their emotions. And it would be oftentimes like a pressure cooker, Ryan, where then one moment something would happen and it would create the explosion. And so for me, I of course had to work through this myself in that this is the example I had. I was falling into that pattern. Now, the first step in all of this, I think, is the awareness of it. If you're not aware of it, then even having the courage is not available yet because you're not even noticing it's happening, right? So I think the first step for anybody in thinking, okay, this kind of sounds like it relates to me or what I'm working through, have the awareness, the self-awareness to be able to acknowledge that it's there. Then, Ryan, as you put so beautifully, then to have the courage to be able to say, okay, I want to work on this. And if it takes us down oftentimes a path of recognizing that much of it is about self-worth. In Ravi's case, it was a lot about self-worth and him not feeling as though he could even advocate for himself in a meeting and speak out and have that kind of confidence. Now, you're somebody who said, hey, I will speak out, I'll do it, right? But oftentimes people feel that that's a problem for them, right? How do you advocate people work through that, like to be able to have more of that sense of self-worth and to be able to speak your mind and advocate for yourself?
Yeah, well, I used to run a team of analysts. So I was the head of performance at the police. And, so often analysts will place their confidence in knowledge, which means that every time they would go to a meeting to present to an executive, their confidence would rise or fall based on the topic of conversation. Did I know the answer or not? And, invariably, many of them would just crumble when they were asked a question they did not know the answer to because they placed their confidence in their knowledge. For me, I started to coach them in different ways, which is why don't we place our confidence internally in terms of the people that we are, which is the type of people who gain knowledge and information. So you don't then start to interpret the lack of knowing the answer to the question because you can't predict and prepare for everything. But what you can do is take confidence that you are the sort of person who does X, Y, or Z. And then you go, well, that's 100% me. That is 100% who I am. So I can go and be that and do that. And, and I think sometimes if we continue to place our confidence external to ourselves, then we are how confident we feel rises and falls depending on the situations. So we have to find something that's true within ourselves to place that confidence within. Yeah. And secondly, is I often believe that confidence is the result. I was not confident podcasting, but somewhere down the line, I became confident. And it's the result. It's the result of putting ourselves in that uncomfortable position to begin with. So having a little bit of clarity, where am I competent? What do I know to be true? And that will be, the small little island that I absolutely stand on to know to be true and allow that island to continue to expand as I put myself there.
Yeah, it's there's a Brendan Burchard quote that I think speaks to what you're saying. He's a author, a high performance coach. He said, it isn't about figuring it out before you start or before you go forward with whatever it is. It's about cultivating the belief that you can figure it out as you go.
Yeah, that's real. Like you start to believe that you're letting go of the harness.
Yeah, because it's trust, isn't it? I mean, that's really what I was just having this conversation a few days ago with one of my clients, and I was telling him, trust the future you. I said, trust the future you, like that when the time comes and you're going to be in that room and someone asks you that question, that you'll be able to figure it out, or that you can then learn it as you go. Because similar language, are you the type of person that can figure it out as you go? Absolutely. Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't have the answer and you were able to figure it out as you went? Absolutely. Okay, so you have all the evidence there, right, to prove that you are that type of person. So let that be, and I was referring to it this way, Ryan. I was saying, what's fueling the tank here? If what's fueling it is, do I have it all figured out? Or what's fueling it is, I'm the type of person that can figure it out as I go.
The other thing for me to kind of add on to that is Ravi will have had a years and years worth of life and experiences. And the thing that we do man's search for meaning is that we interpret things and we create the meaning for it. So something might happen and you and I might internally interpret what those things mean in completely different ways. Oh, see, this reinforces why I'm not good enough. This reinforces why I shouldn't have nice things. This is why I shouldn't be doing this job, why I shouldn't speak out. Insert whatever that is. It is a program. It is a narrative. It is a story of which your advice around go and get some self-awareness, lean in, be curious. Well, what's that coming up? What does that, many of the comments that I felt at the police pushed me to go and look at where does that come from? What beliefs do I have around who I am? And why is that one causing me some angst? Brilliant. It's increasing my awareness. But we have to be very careful not to just immediately assign meaning, because that meaning we've given comes from some other program that probably somebody else gave us in life, which is probably disempowering.
Yeah, it's similar to, you ever see those illusions where there are like two horizontal lines and your mind goes, okay, that one looks longer than the other one, right? And then you see it with like the red line vertical, and it's like, oh, they're the same exact size. It's because your mind immediately comes to a conclusion, but often it's wrong. It's inaccurate. It's deceiving, right? In the same way, a thought could come up about yourself or about something that happened in the past. You've given it that meaning, but it's not always accurate. The mind is oftentimes creating a story that is only looking at it from one angle. And the power we have, and I often refer to it this way, is we are meaning making machines. And as meaning making machines, we have this power to choose that meaning. And that's, to me, a superpower when somebody can recognize that. When I see that aha moment in a client, like, oh, wow, I'm making that choice. I have the power to make that choice as to the meaning that I am giving to this situation. And so, okay, we cultivate this within us, Ryan, right? We have this ability now to hopefully connect with ourselves a bit more, build up some self-worth, and be able to lead from wholeness, as you were saying, from the heart. What are, like, for Ravi, for example, wanting to connect with people, wanting to be more inspiring and empower people, what are some of the strategies that you've used that you found really effective in either your communication or the way in which you relate and connect to the people who are looking to you as a leader?
Yeah, I think the leader is only able to meet others to the depths they've met themselves. I think a leader will serve from the reservoir of self-discovery.
Hmm.
And it starts there. Create connection with oneself. Have an intimate understanding of who I am. What do I stand for? What do I care about? How do I respond under stress? What's my good, my bad, the lesser bits that I don't want people to see? What's my shadow? How do I respond while stressed? What are my stories? Build up that intimate understanding of self, and the yin and the yang. It's got a little bit of dark in the light and a little bit of light in the dark. And I think we have to make peace that's both us. That's us. There's light and dark within me. I'm capable of both. I'm capable of helping. I'm capable of harming. But if I refuse to acknowledge that I'm capable of harming, guess what? That shadow is going to run me when I don't realize it. That's subconscious stuff. And that will be my leadership shadow. That will be my subconscious programming when I'm stressed, when I'm under pressure. That side will come out because I don't even know it exists. I'm not being conscious. I'm acting out of my programming because the Frankl quote, I'm responding. I'm literally reacting, as opposed to responding. So that's it. It starts there. Intimate self-awareness. What then happens? I don't know. Whatever Ravi or whatever everyone's listening feels that is the most appropriate thing at that time. But trusting that our natural human tendencies is to seek connection. We can only seek connection with that which we don't repress. You can't belong to a workplace where you only give 50% of yourself. That's fitting in. You can't truly belong anywhere where you hide 50% of yourself. You just fit in. You've cut parts of yourself off so that you don't get kicked out of the tribe, but you don't belong. because they haven't embraced the wholeness of you. And if you want to belong anywhere, you first have to belong to yourself, belong in your home. Don't reject any part of you, fully integrate it, understand you're capable to help and to harm. And in having that awareness, you will choose better strategies to help in all situations. And that means that you will then be courageous enough to put your whole self forward to whatever spaces and places you choose to put yourself. When you have an understanding of what really matters, you were talking about values and, because we've got limited time, right? Where do I really want to place myself? What do I want to do in this lifetime? Who do I want to be in this lifetime? If you don't know the answers to those questions, then what's worth your time and your energy and your sacrifice? And Ravi's battling with this idea of his two competing values, which is his work and his family.
Mm-hmm.
If Ravi understood that those were his two top values, he would find an alternative solution that other people will not find, which is how do I make them and not work or family? How do I become someone that is both a senior manager and a present loving father and husband? I'm going to explore what's possible because that's the bit around the edge of the yin yang. It's the silver bit. It's called the way. What is the way that I'm going to lead that only I possibly can because I have this mixture of my values? I'm going to explore what's possible when I prioritize work and family. Let's go and see what I can go and demonstrate in the world.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to add to that is something I recently read. It's an article. It was quoting Steve Jobs about what he felt it took to be someone of great intelligence and great leadership. And he referred to the experiences we have being diverse. So what he was saying is when you have different types of experiences and different conversations with different people, it then opens your mind to different perspectives. So in other words, if someone is saying, well, I think I got it all figured out, but I'm still struggling here. I'm still not able to really, be the kind of leader that I want to be, or I'm not getting the results. It may be because you still are only seeing it from that one angle. And the best thing you could do is have the courage to reach out to other people and ask them for the feedback to be able to put yourself in different scenarios, different environments that will allow for you to learn through experience, not just from you repeating the same thoughts in your head over and over and over again.
Yeah. And guess what? If I've got it all figured out, I've got no need for you. I've got no purpose. We've got no purpose for each other. We're not supposed to have it all figured out. And I think there's 8 billion of us for a reason. We're a mosaic. We've got, and I think our job is to find out what kind of puzzle piece am I? What little edges have I got? What colors am I? So that I can place myself. Yeah. I've got the humility to know that I'm just one of 8 billion, but the responsibility to know that that mosaic remains incomplete if I don't place myself. I have something innately that the world needs. I will bring that. But I am also undeniably clear that there are things in the world that I need. Like I didn't grow up with a masculine presence. I can't do DIY. That's just a tax on my life. I'm going to need other people that are craftsmen, I'm going to need a craftsman in my life. During the COVID years, I was fortunate enough to interview a really cool guy. His name is Thomas Gronemark. And Thomas is a throw-in coach. So in the UK, we obviously follow soccer, football, and there's this famous team called Liverpool FC. And at the time, Liverpool were the best team in the country. And their head coach, Jurgen Klopp, fascinating leader. And what Jurgen did is he brought Thomas in as a throw-in coach because he recognized that as the leader, this is the value of Jurgen, right? He had the foresight to see what he needed to make his team better, but he had the wisdom to know that he was not the one that was going to be the best to coach them in that specialty. So he wanted to surround himself and his coaching team with the best at what that specialty does. And I think that's a great example as the leader, right? Is to have the foresight to see what's possible, to see the vision, and to invite others and to share their perspectives and their expertise so that we get the best solution from the group. And I think that's a wonderful thing for us to think about, because at the police, so often we equated leadership with I'm the one that has to have the answers. I'm the one that needs to know. And then what that happens is the information is just a top-down thing. And then what people then learn in the team is that they have to go up to get the information, tell me what to do. you don't really have an empowered workforce that can think for itself. If you really create that vision where everybody else is encouraged to, up and down that information so we can get the best solutions, that's when great things happen, I think.
And that requires humility. It requires, yeah, lots of humility. And oftentimes, I was just having this conversation actually in the car yesterday with my fiance, Alex. We were talking about leadership a bit. And she was saying how there was a person who, at an old job, like he really wanted to be a manager, like he really wanted it. And the problem and he wasn't a very good manager. And the problem was, it was about the power for him. It was about being in that position of power. And I think that when you're striving for that powerful position, fueled by what it gives you, the sense of ego that gets cultivated from that, you're approaching it the wrong way. All of what we see in great leadership is the complete opposite, as you just gave with that example, as dropping of ego. And I also use this one principle. I often use it in a lot of the speaking I do. The principle of one of the principles of conscious leadership. It's a simple mantra. What's right, not who's right. I don't need to be right. I don't need to be the one that comes up with the answer. What I need to figure out is what's right for my team. What's right to get me towards that specific outcome that we're all after.
100%. And if you and I drew a 6 in between us, you would adamantly and vehemently say it was a 9. And guess what? You'd be right. And This is the thing. So two people could be right. How can that be the case? And I think that's the conscious part, is that we can transcend my perspective and seek others' perspectives. And that requires the humility to ask questions, right? It's the supposition is, okay, there's more for me to learn. If I'm not humble, if I think I've got it all figured out, then I'm not going to ask you your opinion because I know what I'm doing. And it's a paradigm shift. You're right. Am I using power over people, or am I pulling power out of people? And that's a very different paradigm shift.
Yeah. There's an example of this that I referenced before. And I know these days he's quite controversial, and it's Elon Musk. But I will reference something from years ago. This was before, all the political stuff, where I heard this story where it was coming towards the end of quarter, and he brought on all of his sales leaders, his delivery leaders onto a call. And it was at a time when Tesla could have gone bankrupt. This was 2018. And getting enough deliveries and sales before the end of quarter could have made or break the company. And you would think someone as brilliant and intelligent in terms of, his intellect, Elon would be on that call just telling everybody what he thinks and coming up with the strategies. The entire call, all he did was ask questions. He didn't give any advice. He went around to everybody, not in a very harsh or mean way, just what do you think? What's the problem areas? What are the obstacles that are in the way? And he just listened to everybody on that call. And I thought that, and again, I don't mean he masters leadership in every avenue in his life, but I can say that was a really powerful example of leadership that I learned during my time at Tesla. Yeah. Yeah. To be able to say, the leader of an organization like that, CEO, recognized that in that moment, asking questions was the best approach.
Well, the fear for most leaders who don't entertain that strategy is, what does that mean? What does that make me look like? And I'd suggest that maybe the people that were on the receiving end of those questions probably felt more valued and that they had something to contribute. And when you contribute, you increase commitment, right? I've had a say, and now for I'm committed, we're part of this decision making, and let's go.
Yeah. Who, I do this sometimes in groups. I'll ask, like, who here likes to be told what to do? Like, who loves that? Who loves it from when they were young and their parents would tell them what to do? Who enjoyed that, right? Nobody says that they love to. But hey, when you say you're going to do something, it then creates that commitment within you. And speaking of that, actually, it's perfect, because I want to ask you to consider a scenario where if you had the opportunity to meet Ravi. So let's say Ravi was, you have such a phenomenal podcast, always better than yesterday. Let's say he was listening to your podcast, and then he went onto your website and he wanted to meet with you, set up a time. He tells you his story, right? He tells you what he's going through, what he's working through. And you listen, and knowing you would acknowledge what he's going through. You would empathize with what he's dealing with. But rather than just blurt out advice, you would pose a question to him to evoke something out of him. What would you ask him?
Yeah. What's important to you? What's important to you, Ravi? Who do you want to be? What kind of heartprint, what legacy do you want to leave? What do you want people to say about you? And we'd find ways for him to confidently be and do more of that. There's a bit in his story where he's torn. He's torn between kids. He's torn between job. He's doubting. A lot of these things come from an external source, a thinking source. We want to nudge Ravi into knowing. And that starts with knowing self, knowing who he is, what he's here to do, what he's got, what he's not got, what he wants to give, what's going to, justify his time and his limited energy that he has in this lifetime. Who really matters most in his lifetime? And yeah, just nudge Ravi into making confident decisions based on who he says he is, not who the world needs him to be.
Yeah. Powerful. Hold up that mirror for him. Right?
It's all there, the wisdom.
Right. Be the mirror for him, and then he will come to the realization. That's amazing, Ryan. Ryan, thank you for taking so much time out of your day-to-day to connect with me and to work through this story. And for anyone listening, I really recommend to check out Ryan's work, abty.co.uk. That is the website where you have everything there, and you'll have your podcast on there. You're speaking, you're consulting. So abty.co.uk. Great place to find Ryan's information, connect with him. I highly recommend you do. Ryan, thank you again, my friend, for taking time out of your day to chat with me.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Listening back to that conversation with Ryan, I immediately felt concerned that I was going to find it difficult to synthesize this down to only 3 insights and only 3 actionable takeaways, because he shared so much wisdom. And I really think you'd get value out of listening to his podcast, Always Better Than Yesterday. He's just such a natural conversationalist, and I think you'll get a ton out of it. So if you haven't already looked it up, I encourage you to do so. But here we are with our insights and actionable takeaways. I'm going to do my best to synthesize them down. 3 insights and 3 takeaways. The first insight: leadership is a verb. It is a behavior. And the behavior that Ryan defines it as is love in action. Love in action requires courage. Second insight: lead with love, not for love. When you lead for love, you're attempting to fill a hole, H-O-L-E. When you lead with love, you express what is already whole, W-H-O-L-E. Third insight: in the space, you choose meaning. The Viktor Frankl quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So we want to live in that space, and we want to expand that space so we can then choose the meaning that we are appropriating to our stimuli. Actionable takeaways. Number 1, place confidence in the type of person you are, not in what you know. If you only place it in what you know, you're going to be quite limited. But if you place that confidence in who you know you are and what you can trust about yourself and your ability to learn, then you can take on anything. Second actionable takeaway: ask questions to gain commitment. If you're just giving advice and you're just telling people what to do, they're not really going to be as bought in. But when you ask great questions, you gain commitment as a leader. Third actionable takeaway is a process of self-knowing. Ask yourself these questions such as, what's important to you? What's the heart print that you want to leave? Who do you want to be? Because as Ryan said, if you only show up as 50% of yourself, you're not going to be that effective. You're not going to be the kind of leader that you really want to be. You have to show up as 100% of yourself. And the only way you're going to do that is through a process of self-knowing. Join us in our next episode. On Friday, when we do our shorter episode, I am going to give you a list of my favorite questions. These are the questions that I ask people to evoke great responses in them to help them to find the aha moments and to take action, to be the version of themselves they want to be. So I'm kind of going behind the curtain here, and I'm going to give you some of my favorite coaching questions that I ask people all the time. For anyone who wants to be a better leader, a better coach, this is an episode that you don't want to miss. Remember, those are only on the podcast platform of your choosing. You will not see that one on YouTube. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.